There's something you need to understand right now. The universe is speaking to you in a language most people will never learn to hear. And what I'm about to share with you, this specific transmission, it's not going to come around again. Not like this, not in this form. So, if you're here, if you've arrived at this moment, pay attention because the signal you're receiving right now is uniquely calibrated to where you are, who you've become, and what you're finally ready to see. You know that feeling, don't you? That quiet hum that lives somewhere deep in your chest, like an old song playing on repeat in a room you can't quite enter. There are nights when it gets louder, when you can almost touch it. The echo of roads you never took. The versions of your life that existed as possibilities but never materialized into form. They haven't disappeared. They're still there, hovering at the edges of your awareness like whispers in an empty hallway. Not resentful, not bitter, just present, watching the person you chose to become instead. And here's what most people don't realize. Here's the truth that shifts everything. Those unrealized paths, those unchosen versions of your story, they're not grieving your absence. They're witnessing your courage. They understand something you've forgotten. They see the weight you've been carrying. The sleepless hours when you wondered if you destroyed your own future. The moments when you confused self-preservation with self-sabotage. Not every road you walked away from was a wrong turn. Some of those paths were disguised catastrophes, disasters dressed up as opportunities. You turned your back, and in that turning you protected something irreplaceable. You protected your own becoming. So right now in this moment, I want you to do something radical. Forgive the version of yourself who didn't have the map you have now. Forgive the one who chose to survive instead of chasing some glorified version of success that would have hollowed you out from the inside. The one who refused when the world pressured you to say yes. The one who remained when departure seemed like it would cause less damage. You worked with the awareness you had available. You navigated by the only light you could see, and that has always been sufficient. It has always been more than enough. Let me tell you something about timing that nobody explains. You haven't fallen behind. You haven't missed some cosmic deadline that everyone else somehow knew about. You've been developing in the hidden spaces, the way celestial bodies form in darkness long before anyone witnesses their light. Every seeming detour, every moment of hesitation, every time you paused when others rushed forward, that was you listening to a frequency only your spirit could detect. You didn't let your moment pass you by. You evolved into the moment itself. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's where the quantum field starts to reveal its mechanics. Every choice you made, every path you abandoned, every version of yourself you left behind, they're not separate from who you are now. They're woven into your present reality. They've shaped the frequency you're broadcasting. And the universe, the field itself, it recognizes this. It knows the signature of someone who has walked through fire and emerged with their essence intact. I wish you could perceive yourself the way the field perceives you. How reality itself seems to pause in recognition when you enter a space. How every so-called mistake actually refined your edges, creating openings for light to move through you in ways that perfection never could. You're not just the residue of your decisions. You're living evidence that incomplete narratives can carry their own luminescence, that unfinished doesn't mean unworthy. What's happening right now as you're hearing these words is a specific kind of alignment. The universe operates in cycles, in patterns, in waves of opportunity that rise and recede like tides. And right now, you're in a window, a portal moment. The ghosts of your unlived lives, those paths you didn't walk, they're not haunting you. They're bearing witness. They're standing in respectful acknowledgement of what it required for you to become this particular version of yourself, the version that made it here, the version that survived. If this is touching something deep in you, if you're feeling the resonance of this transmission, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. This is how we keep this frequency alive, how we stay connected to this level of truth. So when those whispers of what might have been begin to surface, don't push them away. Let them rise. Let them gather around you. Let them observe what you've built from the wreckage of certainty, from the ashes of plans that dissolved, from the soil of disappointments that taught you how to grow in new directions. And then when they've seen enough, when they understand the full scope of your journey, I want you to do something powerful. Lift your face, not in apology for the roads you didn't take, not in regret for the versions you didn't become, but in wonder, in reverence, in absolute awe of the fact that you arrived here, against the gravity of every doubt that tried to pull you under, against the silence of moments when no one believed what you could see, against every almost, every near miss, every time you came close to giving up entirely. You made it, you're here, and that is not a small thing, that is everything. Here's what the quantum field teaches us about this moment. Every particle exists in a state of potential until it's observed, until consciousness interacts with it, and your past, all those unchosen paths, they exist in superposition, multiple possibilities held in simultaneous potential. But the moment you witness them with compassion instead of regret, with gratitude instead of shame, something shifts. The field collapses into a new configuration. Your relationship to your own history transforms. And when that internal structure changes, your external reality has no choice but to reorganize around it. This is the signal most people miss. They think the past is fixed, solid, unchangeable, but quantum mechanics reveals a different truth. The observer affects the observed. Your consciousness right now has the power to rewrite the meaning of everything that came before, not the facts, not the events themselves, but the story you tell about them. The frequency they broadcast, the role they play in your current unfolding. You've been taught that growth is linear, that progress moves in a straight line from point A to point B. But that's not how consciousness evolves. That's not how reality actually works. Evolution moves in spirals. You circle back to the same themes, the same lessons, the same wounds. But each time you return, you're at a higher elevation. You see more. You understand differently. What looked like failure the first time reveals itself as preparation the second time. What felt like an ending transforms into a beginning when you view it from the right altitude. And this is where most people get stuck. They judge their journey by someone else's timeline. They compare their chapter 7 to someone else's chapter 20. They see the highlight reel of another person's breakthrough and feel like they're falling behind. But you can't fall behind on a path that's uniquely yours. You can't miss a deadline that was never universal to begin with. Your unfolding operates on its own schedule, governed by laws that only your soul fully comprehends. Take a moment right now, breathe into this, feel it in your body. You are not late, you are not lost, you are not lacking. You are precisely where the universe needs you to be to receive what's coming next. And what's coming next requires all of it. All the detours, all the delays, all the moments when you thought you'd taken a wrong turn. They were calibrating you, tuning your frequency, preparing you to hold a level of reality that your earlier self couldn't have sustained. This is the technology of transformation that ancient wisdom keepers understood and modern physics is finally beginning to validate. Consciousness isn't passive, it's not just receiving reality, it's actively participating in reality's construction. And when you shift your relationship to your past, when you stop resisting what was and start integrating the wisdom it contains, you literally alter your present moment. You change the probability fields around you. You step into a different timeline, but here's what no one tells you about this process. It requires you to release the version of yourself that needed the past to be different. The part of you that's been holding on to regret like it's a form of loyalty. The identity that's been constructed around the story of what went wrong. Because as long as you're energetically bound to those narratives, as long as you're broadcasting the frequency of lack and loss, the universe can only respond with more experiences that match that vibration. This is where everything changes. This is the threshold. You have to be willing to grieve the future you thought you were building and fall in love with the one that's actually emerging. You have to let the ghosts watch. Let them witness your transformation, and then release them back into the quantum field with gratitude, not because they were wrong, not because those paths wouldn't have been beautiful, but because this path, the one you're actually walking, is the one that's real. And reality, when you stop fighting, it has a wisdom that surpasses any plan you could have designed. Let me ask you something. What if every moment of hesitation was actually divine timing? What if every door that closed was protecting you from a room that would have diminished you? What if the universe has been conspiring on your behalf this entire time, and you just couldn't see it because you were looking for a different kind of evidence? This is the frequency shift I'm inviting you into. Not positive thinking, not bypassing the reality of what you've been through, but a fundamental reorientation to the intelligence operating through your life. A recognition that the field itself is responsive, that consciousness and matter are in constant dialogue, and that you, right here, right now, have more agency than you've been taught to believe. The unchosen paths aren't failures. They're the negative space that gives definition to the masterpiece you're creating. They're the silence between notes that makes the music meaningful. And when you can hold them with that level of awareness, when you can see your entire journey as a coherent whole rather than a collection of mistakes interrupted by occasional successes, something extraordinary happens. You stop living in reaction to your past and start living in alignment with your potential. Now, I want you to do something with me. This isn't just about understanding conceptually. This is about embodiment. This is about letting this truth land in your nervous system, in your cells, in the quantum field that you're made of and that you're constantly broadcasting into. So, take a moment and comment below with this specific phrase. Write it exactly like this. I honor every path I didn't take, not as a casual comment, not as a way to engage with content, but as an energetic declaration, as a signal you're sending to the field itself, as a conscious interruption in the old loop. Because when you speak something into existence, when you claim it in front of witnesses in community, you're not just thinking it, you're making it real. You're collapsing the wave function. You're choosing which version of reality you're stepping into. And here's what happens when you do this. When you declare something with intention, when you put language to a shift that's been happening beneath the surface, you activate what quantum physics calls the observer effect. You bring the invisible into form, you take what's been unconscious and make it conscious, and in that act of observation, in that moment of witnessing, everything reorganizes. The neural pathways in your brain start firing in new patterns. The electromagnetic field around your heart begins broadcasting a different signal, and the universe, always listening, always responsive, starts reflecting back a reality that matches this new frequency. This is not metaphor, this is mechanics. This is how transformation actually works at the quantum level. You don't change by trying harder to be different. You change by witnessing what is, by accepting what was, and by declaring what's emerging. And then reality shifts to accommodate that new coherence. Take a moment and share in the comments. What's one path you walked away from that you now see was protecting you? What ghost are you ready to thank and release? Your words create ripples in the field, and sharing this might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. You've spent so long thinking something was wrong with you, believing that your journey should have looked different, carrying shame for the choices you made or didn't make. But what if I told you that shame is just unreleased energy, that it's the friction between who you were and who you're becoming, and that the moment you give yourself permission to honor the full scope of your path, that energy transforms into power, into presence, into the exact fuel you need for what's next. Let that land for a moment. Breathe into it. Feel where it touches something in your body, because this is the kind of knowing that doesn't come from your mind. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere that's been waiting for you to remember, somewhere that's always known you were never broken, just breaking open. And if this is resonating with you, if something in these words is touching a frequency you've been searching for, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this entire space, this conversation, this movement toward a more conscious relationship with reality. Because what we're doing here isn't about consuming content. It's about joining a field of people who understand that transformation is possible, that consciousness is the primary technology, that we're not victims of circumstance, but active participants in the creation of our experience. And the more of us who hold this frequency, the more the collective field begins to shift, the more permission we give others to step into their own becoming. Here's something else about timing that the universe wants you to understand. This specific moment right now, you receiving this transmission in this exact form, it's not random. The algorithm didn't accidentally deliver this to you. The field doesn't make mistakes. You've been preparing for this. All those nights when you questioned everything, all those moments when you almost gave up, all those times when you felt completely alone in your confusion, they were building your capacity to hold what I'm about to tell you. You are not here to live a small life. You never were. But the bigness you're meant for isn't about external achievement. It's not about accumulation or recognition or proving something to people who never understood you in the first place. The expansion you're being called into is internal. It's about the depth of presence you can hold, the amount of reality you can metabolize without shutting down, the degree of truth you can embody without apologizing for it. And to do that, to step into that level of being, you have to release the version of yourself that's still trying to earn worthiness, the one that believes you're only valuable when you're producing, the one that thinks love is something you have to deserve. That version served you, it got you here, but it can't take you where you're going, because where you're going requires you to know, not believe, not hope, but know at a cellular level that you are already whole. Let me share something with you that shifts the entire paradigm. Most people are walking around with a fundamental misunderstanding about how reality works. They think the external world is solid, fixed, unchangeable. That what happened yesterday determines what's possible today, that their past mistakes have somehow locked them into a predetermined future. But quantum physics reveals something radically different, something that changes everything when you really let it sink in. At the subatomic level, particles don't exist in one place. They exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. They're waves of probability until the moment they're observed. And it's the act of observation, the consciousness itself, that collapses that wave into a specific location, a specific outcome. This isn't philosophy. This isn't spirituality trying to sound scientific. This is documented, repeatable, observable reality. Consciousness literally shapes what manifests. Now apply that to your life, to your past, to those ghosts we've been talking about. Every memory you have, every story you tell yourself about what happened and what it means, you're observing it right now, and in that observation, you're collapsing it into a specific meaning. You're choosing which version of that past becomes real in this present moment. The past that limits you or the past that prepared you. The history that proves you're broken or the journey that confirms you're unbreakable. Same events, different observation, different reality. This is where your power lies. Not in changing what happened, but in transforming your relationship to what happened, in rewriting the story, not by denying the facts, but by shifting the frequency of the meaning you're assigning to those facts. And when that frequency changes, when you start observing your history through the lens of wisdom instead of wounds, the quantum field responds. It has to, because consciousness and reality are not separate. They're entangled, they're in constant co-creation. I want you to feel this in your body right now. Think about something from your past that you've been carrying as evidence of your unworthiness. A failure, a rejection, a moment when you fell short. Hold it in your awareness. And now, instead of seeing it as proof of what's wrong with you, what if you observed it as the exact catalyst that cracked you open enough to let new light in? What if that moment wasn't your downfall, but your initiation? What if the universe was actually protecting you by closing that door, by removing that person, by dismantling that plan? Can you feel the shift? That's not just a mental reframe. That's a frequency change. That's the electromagnetic field around your heart literally reorganizing. That's your nervous system moving from a stress response into coherence. And when you're in coherence, when your heart and brain are synchronized, you become a powerful transmitter. You start broadcasting a signal that the universe can't help but respond to. This is the paradox that dissolves when you understand quantum consciousness. You're complete and you're evolving. You're perfect and you're transforming. You're already everything and you're still becoming. Both are true simultaneously, and the moment you try to choose one over the other, you collapse into limitation. But when you can hold both, when you can exist in that space of dynamic wholeness, you step into a reality where miracles aren't exceptions. They're just the natural expression of alignment. Now, what we're touching on here, this understanding of how consciousness literally shapes the quantum field, this is just the surface of something far deeper. If this transmission is landing in you, if you're feeling the pull to understand the complete architecture of how frequency works, how you move from unconscious broadcasting to becoming the signal itself, I've created a full guide that takes you through the entire system beyond the frequencies. A quantum guide to consciousness mastery walks you through the 9 master frequencies, the step-by-step practices for heart-brain coherence, and how to shift from seeking external change to embodying the field itself. It's linked in the pinned comment below. Think about water for a moment. Water doesn't try to be water. It doesn't struggle to flow. It doesn't apologize for taking the shape of whatever container it enters. It simply responds to the laws of its own nature, and in that response, it carves canyons, it nourishes forests, it becomes clouds and returns as rain. It's the same substance, constantly transforming, always itself. You are like that. Your essence doesn't change, but your form is always evolving. And the more you resist that evolution, the more friction you create. The more you try to hold on to a version of yourself that's already dissolving, the more suffering you generate. But the moment you surrender to your own nature, the moment you trust the intelligence moving through you, everything gets easier. Not because the challenges disappear, but because you stop being at war with your own unfolding. Here's what happens when you fight your own evolution. You create what quantum mechanics calls destructive interference. It's when 2 waves meet and cancel each other out. One wave is who you're trying to be. The other wave is who you're naturally becoming, and in the collision you end up with nothing. Paralysis, stagnation. That feeling of being stuck that so many people experience isn't because they're broken. It's because they're broadcasting conflicting frequencies. They're saying yes with their words, but no with their energy. They're moving forward with their actions, but clinging to the past with their consciousness. The universe doesn't know what to do with mixed signals. It can't deliver clarity when you're broadcasting confusion. It can't manifest abundance when you're vibrating lack. Not because it's punishing you, but because it's a mirror. It's reflecting back exactly what you're putting out. And if what you're putting out is contradiction, internal war, resistance to your own truth, that's what you're going to experience more of. But there's another kind of wave interaction, constructive interference. When 2 waves align, when they synchronize, they amplify each other. They create something more powerful than either wave could create alone. And that's what happens when you stop resisting. When you align who you think you should be with who you actually are. When you let the wave of your authentic nature meet the wave of your conscious intention and move together in the same direction, that's when reality starts to reorganize rapidly. That's when the doors that were stuck suddenly open. That's when the resources you needed begin to appear. That's when the people who match your new frequency start showing up. Not because you manifested them through visualization or affirmations, but because you stopped broadcasting interference. You became coherent. And coherence is magnetic. So many of you are fighting a battle that doesn't need to be fought. You're trying to force outcomes, manipulate timelines, control variables that were never meant to be controlled. And in that forcing, you're actually blocking the very thing you're trying to create. Because manifestation, real manifestation, isn't about imposing your will on reality. It's about aligning your frequency with what's already trying to emerge through you. The universe has been sending you signals this entire time. Little nudges, synchronicities, moments when something clicked and you felt a flash of clarity before the doubt rushed back in. Those weren't coincidences. Those were confirmations. The field was showing you that you're on track, that you're exactly where you need to be, that the delays weren't denials. They were divine timing, and here's the key. Here's the piece that shifts everything. You have to start treating those signals as real, not as nice ideas, not as comforting thoughts, but as actual evidence of an intelligent universe that's responding to your consciousness. Because every time you dismiss a synchronicity, every time you explain away a moment of magic, every time you rationalize your intuition out of existence, you're training yourself to be deaf to the very guidance you're asking for. Let me tell you about a principle that ancient mystics understood and modern science is rediscovering. The principle of resonance. If you have two tuning forks in a room and you strike one, the other will begin to vibrate at the same frequency even though you never touched it. They resonate, they entrain, they sync up through the field that connects them. You are a tuning fork. Your consciousness, your emotions, your beliefs, they create a frequency. And the universe is full of other tuning forks, people, opportunities, experiences, all vibrating at their own frequencies. When you're broadcasting fear, you resonate with fearful situations. When you're vibrating unworthiness, you attract experiences that confirm that story. And not because you're being punished, but because of resonance, because like attracts like at the quantum level. But here's what's extraordinary. You can change your frequency right now in this moment. You don't have to wait until everything in your external world is perfect. You don't have to earn the right to vibrate differently. You just have to make a choice, a conscious decision to stop resonating with the old story and start attuning to the truth of what you're becoming. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that sounds too simple, too easy, that real change requires struggle and effort and years of therapy and healing work. And yes, there's a place for that. There's value in deep processing. But there's also this moment of recognition where you realize you've been choosing the frequency of limitation when the frequency of expansion was available all along. And the moment you recognize that, you can choose differently. This is what the signal is. This transmission you're receiving right now, it's not just information, it's a frequency. It's a resonance pattern that's inviting you to match it, to sync up, to let your old vibration dissolve and attune to this new possibility. And if you're still here, if you're still listening, some part of you is already beginning to entrain, already starting to vibrate at this higher frequency, already remembering what it feels like to be aligned with your own truth. The universe will only reveal this once, not because it's withholding information, but because you're only in this exact configuration, this specific state of readiness right now. Tomorrow, you'll be different. Yesterday, you were different, and the transmission that's available in this moment is calibrated to who you are and what you're ready to integrate right here, right now. So, if there's a part of you that's been waiting for permission, for a sign, for confirmation that you're not crazy, for believing there's more, this is it. This is your signal, but you have to claim it. You have to reach out and take hold of what's being offered, not tentatively, not with one foot still in doubt, but with full conviction, with the understanding that your consciousness is the most powerful technology you possess. And when you wield it with intention, with clarity, with alignment to your deepest truth, you don't just change your life, you change the probability field around you. You alter what's possible. Now, as we're moving toward integration here, as you're beginning to feel how all of this connects, I want to give you something practical, something you can do beyond this moment. Because awareness without action is just another form of resistance, and you didn't come this far to stay the same. Tonight, or whenever you finish watching this, I want you to have a conversation with those ghosts, with those versions of yourself that didn't materialize, with those paths you walked away from. But don't do it from a place of regret. Don't make it about wishing things were different. Instead, thank them. Express gratitude for showing you what was possible, for teaching you what you needed to learn, for clarifying what actually matters. And then with love, with respect, with full acknowledgement of their role in your story, release them. Give them permission to dissolve back into pure potential, to return to the quantum field where all possibilities exist. And in that release, in that clearing, you create space, room for new potentials to emerge. Room for the future that's actually trying to find you to finally break through. Because you can't receive what's next while you're still gripping what was. You can't step into your becoming while you're mourning your might have been. But let me give you something else, a practice that goes deeper, because releasing the past is one thing, embodying the future is another. And most people get stuck in the gap between the two. They let go of the old, but they don't know how to anchor the new. So they float in this liminal space, this in-between, feeling untethered and uncertain. Here's what you do. Every morning before you check your phone, before you let the external world dictate your frequency, take 3 minutes, just 3. Set a timer if you need to close your eyes, and instead of visualizing what you want, which keeps it separate from you, keeps it in the future, I want you to drop into the feeling of already being the version of yourself who has what you desire, not the having, the being, because having is external, it comes and goes, but being is internal. It's the frequency, the state, the consciousness. So if you want abundance, don't visualize money in your bank account. Drop into the feeling of being someone who knows they're always provided for. If you want love, don't picture a specific person. Embody the frequency of someone who knows they're worthy of extraordinary love. If you want success, don't imagine the outcome. Become the version of yourself who already knows their value regardless of external validation. Feel that in your body, let it move through your cells. Let it reorganize your nervous system, and then, and this is crucial, open your eyes and move through your day as that person. Make decisions from that frequency, speak from that consciousness, react to challenges from that state, because the universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are, and when you are the vibration of your desire, when you embody it fully, reality has no choice but to reorganize around that frequency. This isn't manifestation as you've been taught. This isn't ask and wait and hope the universe delivers. This is quantum creation. This is consciousness actively participating in the collapse of the wave function. This is you choosing which timeline you're stepping into, not through force or manipulation, but through alignment and embodiment. And here's what makes this so powerful. When you practice this consistently, when you make it a daily rhythm, you're not just changing your thoughts. You're rewiring your neural pathways, you're shifting your autonomic nervous system, you're altering the electromagnetic field your heart generates, and all of that together creates a broadcast signal that the quantum field must respond to. Not eventually, not someday, but immediately. In ways you'll start noticing within days if you're paying attention. This is the practice, this is the work, not once, but as a rhythm, as a way of being. Because transformation isn't an event, it's a process. It's a continuous choosing, a moment decision to align with what's real instead of what you wish was real. To honor what is instead of fighting for what isn't. And every time you make that choice, every time you release resistance and lean into acceptance, you change your vibration, you shift your frequency, you become a different kind of magnet. And the universe, always responsive, always reflecting, begins to deliver experiences that match this new state of being. But I want to address something that might be coming up for you right now. Because I know some of you are sitting with this information and thinking, this sounds beautiful, but my life is really hard right now. My circumstances are really challenging. How can I vibrate at a higher frequency when everything around me is falling apart? And I hear you, I see you. This isn't about bypassing your reality or pretending struggle doesn't exist. This is about understanding that your external circumstances are a lagging indicator. They're showing you what frequency you were broadcasting yesterday, last week, last month. They're not showing you what's possible right now. And the mistake most people make is they wait for their circumstances to change before they change their frequency. But that's backwards. That's trying to change the reflection without changing what's standing in front of the mirror. Your power is not in your circumstances. Your power is in your response to your circumstances. It's in your ability to hold a different frequency. even when the external world is giving you every reason to collapse into fear or despair or resignation. And that doesn't mean you're in denial. It doesn't mean you're not taking practical action to improve your situation. It means you're doing what needs to be done from a place of coherence instead of chaos, from alignment instead of panic, from trust instead of terror. And here's what happens when you can do that. When you can meet difficulty without letting it define your frequency. The universe sees that, the field registers that, and it responds, not always in the ways you expect, not always in the timeline you demand, but it responds because you're demonstrating a level of consciousness that most people never access. You're showing that you understand reality at a deeper level, and that understanding, that embodied wisdom, it unlocks doors that force can never open. Think about the caterpillar in the chrysalis. If you could observe what's happening inside, it would look like complete destruction. The caterpillar's body literally dissolves into soup, pure chaos, no form, no structure. And if the caterpillar had consciousness, if it could think about what was happening, it would probably believe it was dying. It would probably think everything had gone terribly wrong. But that dissolution is not death, it's transformation, it's necessary. The caterpillar has completely let go of being a caterpillar before it can become a butterfly, and so do you. The parts of your life that are dissolving right now, the structures that are falling apart, the identities that are crumbling, they're not evidence that you're failing, they're evidence that you're transforming, and transformation always looks like destruction from the inside. So if you're in the soup right now, if you're in that dark space where nothing makes sense and everything feels uncertain, breathe, stay present, trust the intelligence of the process, because what's forming in darkness is something your current consciousness can't even imagine yet. Something bigger, something more aligned, something that could never exist if you were still clinging to the form you used to be. Before we close, I want you to do one more thing with me, and this is important. This is how we anchor this transmission into form, how we make it more than just words you heard. Drop one word in the comments, just one. The word that captures the energy, the intention, the transformation you're choosing right now. Not what you think you should say, not what sounds spiritual or impressive, but the word that's actually alive in you, the one that's trying to emerge, the one that represents your signal to the quantum field. Because when you name something, you claim it. When you speak it into existence in community, in front of witnesses, you're not just thinking it, you're declaring it. You're making it real, and that declaration ripples out into the field in ways you can't predict but will absolutely experience. And consider this. Watch this video again tomorrow morning before you let the external world set your frequency for the day. Let it recalibrate you. Let it remind you of what you know in your deepest self. And if someone comes to mind while you're watching, someone who's struggling to forgive their own path, share this with them, not as casual content, but as a transmission. Because when you give this understanding to another person, you're not just helping them. You're reinforcing the frequency in yourself. You're participating in the expansion of collective consciousness. You're creating synchronicities and accelerating manifestation for everyone involved, including you. And if you haven't already, subscribe, not just to stay connected to this content, but to stay coherent with this frequency, to remain in conversation with this level of truth. Because what we're building here, it's not just a channel. It's a collective field, a space where consciousness can recognize itself, where transformation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. And the more of us who hold this awareness, the more we embody this understanding, the more the world around us has to reorganize to reflect that reality. This is how change happens, not through force, not through struggle, but through a critical mass of people who remember what they are, who stop believing the lie of limitation, who choose to live as the conscious creators they've always been. You made it here, through everything, through every obstacle, every doubt, every moment when continuing seemed impossible, you made it. And that's not something to take lightly. That's not something to diminish or dismiss. That is the evidence, the proof, the confirmation that you are stronger, wiser, more resilient than you've been giving yourself credit for. So when the ghosts rise, when the whispers of unlived lives begin to speak, let them watch, let them witness, let them see what you've become. In spite of everything, because of everything, through everything, and then lift your head, not in apology, not in regret, but in absolute wonder, in celebration, in recognition of the miracle that you are still here, still choosing, still becoming. The universe has spoken, the signal has been delivered. What you do with it, now, that's between you and the field. That's between you and your own becoming. But know this, you wouldn't have received this transmission if you weren't ready for it. The universe doesn't waste energy. It doesn't send signals to closed receivers. So if you're here, if these words found you, you're ready. Whether you feel it or not, whether you believe it or not, you're ready. And the universe is waiting to see what you'll do with that readiness, what you'll create from it, what version of reality you'll step into. Now that you know what you know, now that you've seen what you've seen, now that you can't unsee it, this is your moment, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel more prepared. Right now, this is it. The signal you've been waiting for, the permission you've been seeking, the confirmation that you're not alone in this, that there's an intelligence moving through all of it, that you're part of something so much bigger than your individual story. So take it, claim it, let it change you, let it reorganize everything you thought you knew about yourself and what's possible. Because you didn't come this far to play small, you didn't survive everything you've survived to settle for a life that doesn't honor the depth of what you've learned. The ghosts are watching, the field is listening, and you right here, right now, you're finally ready to become everything you've always been. That will always be something worth celebrating. Now, understanding how to release the past is crucial. But there's another layer that's equally essential, because once you've made peace with what was, the real question becomes, what happens when you stop forcing and start flowing? When you release the grip of control and let life move through you instead of against you, that's where true quantum mastery begins. The video appearing on your screen right now reveals one of the most powerful principles for effortless creation. It shows you what happens when you stop chasing and allow yourself to be pursued by the very reality you've been trying to manifest. This is the natural next step in your evolution.